Let's go to Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Finale, Ricky. Episode 6. We are done with season 1 for Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Already finished. I want to get your initial reactions to this finale. This was coming off the Trial of the Seven. It comes after the death of Baelor Targaryen. It goes into the fallout of the Trial of the Seven. And this episode, I saw the trailer for this finale before it came out. And I basically thought, that told me everything. I know what this episode's going to be. And the only question it had to answer is, where do we go from here? Like, where does Dunk go from here? Where does Egg go from here? Will they be together at the end of this finale? And to answer that question, I think this episode in this finale was serviceable enough, did its thing. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, it obviously was like this whole show it was immediate aftermath of the previous episode, right? They've been doing that consistently. And here they really tied up every storyline pretty much in this season, in this episode, right? But while doing that, tying everything up, they also are setting up the season 2, right? And I think they did a really great job of, again, honing in on the relationships that have been built, right? Or the ones where there were prior relationships, like, for example, Dunk and Baelor, and then kind of filling that in with Makar at the end, and the deep themes of like responsibility and guilt and whatnot, right? Especially in a quieter episode, right? That was filled in very well here, right? With a Makar, and he had his screen time here. And I think overall, this episode focused primarily on, like, again, the guilt and responsibility around Dunk and everyone else involved, yes, but it does set up season 2 with Dunk and Egg and the new adventures to come. And there are a couple other novellas that I know have been written, and I know we can get to that later. But I think that overall, I think for this season to happen, for them to actually tie everything up, and also giving us a platform for season 2, that's something where Game of Thrones fans are happy about, right? Because this has been a frustrated group, including us, the past couple of years, where it's like, oh, like, obviously we knew Game of Thrones last season wasn't based off of any books, and look how that ended up, right? This stayed true for the most part to the actual novella. George R.R. Martin was heavily involved, and it ended up being great, right? And now with this episode, right, tying everything up and then going into season 2, it gives us hope, saying we can continue to do this in the next novella.
And George R.R. Martin has said that he has more stories to tell with Dunk and Egg that aren't in the novellas, and he's working hand in hand with this show. And you see what happens when you work with the person who's responsible for the source material. It's really providing a lot of hope for the future of the show too. A very successful first season, a surprisingly great first season. And then I think it did a pretty good job teasing, a couple different things that we'll talk about more towards the end of this review. But Makar, I thought, was a huge part of this episode. Finally, you get a performance from the actor who plays Makar. I thought maybe the best scene of this finale was the first one-on-one between Makar and Dunk. And you talk about the themes of guilt, right, in this episode, the responsibility that these two characters feel for the death of, the heir to the Iron Throne in Baelor. That one-on-one convo, like, Makar wants Egg to squire for Dunk. Dunk's like, I'm done with Princess and things like that. But even before that offer happens, like, Dunk feels a little bit of responsibility, right, for Baelor taking his side, fighting against the other Targaryens like Aerion, like Makar, like Darren. And on the other side, you have Makar. He's the one who swung the mace that killed his brother. And he knows how people will react to this. And I love that they gave you this perspective. And him just telling Dunk and telling the audience, like, I know people are going to say I killed my brother. I know people are going to say, like, what that looks like, and now I am the heir to the Iron Throne. And I know also he's very, like, retrospective. He's seeing everything. He's saying, when I make a decision, people are going to say, would Baelor have made that decision, right? Baelor would have been the better king. He's more suited to rule. But where do we find ourselves? Where Makar, me, I am the heir to the Iron Throne. There's going to be whispers. And then he connects it to Dunk. He says, there's going to be whispers that you robbed the people of the next great king of the Seven Kingdoms, right? By having him fight on your side. Okay. So I just thought that was really impactful because of that theme you talked about, guilt. And it's not just Dunk, but it's Makar also realizing he killed his brother, and that's people weren't exactly sure. I know it was very fast when it happened in the Trial of Seven when his mace hit the back of Baylor's head, but I just thought this is a character we're going to see more of, and I thought it was the best. And there's a couple other scenes I'm like excited to see more Makar, but just a good performance I think from that actor that we hadn't gotten much of this entire season.
Right. And it's because Baylor was in that frame instead of him, and now he kind of steps into that role with Dunk in that relationship, and they're both sharing responsibility and guilt of the trial, of Baylor's death, of the realm's loss, and what people are going to think of them going forward, good
Right.
and bad. And again, they're again mourning and thinking more bad right now. So I think it was a good performance on Makar, and especially like with Egg as well, right?
Yeah.
And the implications with Egg, and maybe some things that kind of drifted away from the novella, which is actually interesting as well. But I know we'll get into later.
But this episode too, I was a little shocked because I didn't know this is like a fallout episode of the Trial of the Seven. You see Dunk walking around, right? The tournament, and as the tournament's wrapping up, people are heading on their way. And it's not like people are like going up to Dunk and like showing love for him because of his bravery, because of how courageous he was, you know. People are kind of just looking at him, talking behind his back. And it kind of told me everything about the Game of Thrones world that I already knew, where it was like, these things happen, life goes on. Life is treacherous, life is tragic, but you have to go about your day to day. Because there's other times where like Dunk is given the opportunities he thought he was going to get from this tournament from not actually competing. Like he is offered by a Targaryen, right, to live on their land, right, and to have a Targaryen prince as his squire. Lionel Baratheon is offering a chance to gallivant around Westeros and basically be the brother like a brother that is not related by blood. You know, either a brother he loves or hates is what he says. You know, so I think he's given those opportunities, and it doesn't feel as good, right? It feels terrible because of what has happened with losing a potential great king that Westeros is starving for. So, did you find it like surprising that Dunk really wasn't kind of lifted on someone's shoulders at the end of this, following the Trial of the Seven?
No, I think it's very Game of Thrones, and I think a huge thing where you were just saying with the potential options for Dunk at the end, like at episode one, he would have only been able to dream of those, right? And I think a big part of this season was the theme of him not only becoming a knight, but like and what it means to be a knight, but what knights are in reality in this
Mm.
world, right? And he kind of figured out like knights aren't actually what he thought they were going to be, what he learned from Arlen, right? And I think by the time he's getting all these, he's like, all right, well, being a knight isn't like for one of these things isn't what I thought it was. I don't want to be one of those people. And he kind of understands like, oh, maybe that's why like Penetry Arlen wasn't necessarily the greatest knight and he didn't get those offers, but maybe he also was like kind of going on his own path because he knew how to be a good knight or like honor or not honor, but like be what actually is representation of a knight for the most part. And it's like, all right, I'm not going to join one of these houses because those are corrupt or morally corrupt, I should say. And he just goes on his own path. And the season was kind of figuring out what Dunk's path was going to be, him figuring out himself as a knight.
I agree. And he probably looked at this experience, and that's why he doesn't want to go with the Targaryens, right? Not just because of what happened with Baelor and because he doesn't want to deal with, Targaryen princes anymore, but he sees like when you get these things, what it can do to you. Like I thought of Fossaway, who betrays at the Trial of Seven, betrays Dunk, and he goes to the other side when he's offered things by the Targaryens, and he trade like materialistic type of things, land, to become a lord alongside of a knight, and you get wealthy, you get riches, but you're trading your honorability. And I feel like he understands that's what the best thing that Arlen taught him is how to be an honorable knight, and I felt bad for Dunk in this episode because he's walking around and like Raymond Fossaway, Raymond, yeah, he's got a woman with him. He has a girl that he's now going to marry. He's going to have a child most likely with her. And Dunk is like awkwardly like a third wheel in that, whole scene. And it's like, damn, he really has nothing. He doesn't even have a squire anymore. It really is like something where Trial of the Seven, you won. you forced Arian to recant his accusation. It usually doesn't go this way. And now he still finds himself at a low. I did want to talk about you mentioned Arlen. There's a very pivotal scene that happens in this finale, a flashback, and we find out that Dunk was never knighted by Arlen. And this made me think of what's going to happen later on, season 2, 3 of this show. This has got to come back to roost, right? This has got to come back where somehow, like, there's going to be an admission by Dunk that he was never actually knighted. Like, what's going to, did you think, were you surprised by this? Like, that he was never knighted?
No, I was kind of shocked at the social media response to this. I thought it was obvious. Like I thought the first couple episodes when people were asking him about it, like for example, like the head of the games of the tournament when he's talking to him about it, like and questioning him, like Dunk was so hesitant and nervous, and I thought it was obvious from that point. Like I thought it was actually good storytelling for them saying without saying that he was never actually knighted, right? He was taking advantage of the situation, right? And I didn't think they needed this until now I see on social media, everyone's like, oh my God, he was never knighted. I'm like, man, I thought that was like so obvious. I didn't think that was even a question.
Really? I thought
Yeah.
it was like maybe the part, like when you talk about storytelling, it's like the difficulty how difficult it was for Dunk to, I guess, lie, you know, and the guy's so honorable, does things the right way. Him having to tell people that he was knighted when he wasn't, and how hard it was to get out of him. I kind of see it now. And now, when you see that flashback and you reflect on the season, I think it does kind of make sense. But I think that's going to have some type of ramifications going forward. Something's going to happen with that.
It's you want to say yes because like him and Egg are tight and they'll be on these adventures and they'll probably get like deep intimate thoughts going around.
Yep.
But I will say that kind of feels like a season 1 storyline like this was, him
Mhm.
trying to prove that he's a knight. And now I feel like he's proved it. So like we don't need to worry about that going forward. And I think like even in that last scene where it's Egg and Dunk riding along on whatever fields and you have Sir Arlen there, Pennyworth, and then he goes on his separate ways. Like it was funny because he was going through the fields and it's a joke with the show, right? And the humor with the show, but it's also saying like, no, Dunk is now replacing him saying, "Oh, he's a knight and he's going on his own path as a knight." So I don't think we even need that to be a question in season 2. I think we've answered it where, yeah, maybe he wasn't actually knighted, but he is a knight. He has proved it, right? And he knows how to be a good knight, and he's seen the falters of how, or not the falters, but the realities of what a knight is and how his nobility, right, and what he's learned from Pennyworth is going to show through in his new path with Egg.
Right. So it's just maybe like the whole point is you don't need someone to make you a knight to be a good person, right? To be an
Yes.
honorable, great
Yeah.
man of the realm. I like that. Nice job, Ricky. I want to talk about Egg. Egg. Like they keep hinting at like this dark side of Egg. And there's a couple things I got to talk about. One, him basically attempting to murder Arian in his sleep after the trial of the seven. Him carrying the knife behind his back, very sinister, probably the darkest we've ever seen Egg, but being stopped by Makar, his father. And I thought we have to come back also to Makar going with that one-on-one with Dunk, offering squireship of Egg to Dunk, and how hesitant, I guess it's the second one-on-one they have between Dunk and Makar. And Makar says, like, you need to be on our land, right? And then Dunk like kind of counters his offer by saying, I'll take Egg, but he has to stay with me in inns. He's got to stay with me underneath elm trees. He's got to live the life pretty much of a squire to a hedge knight. Like he can't be on Targaryen land. And he kind of wants the experience for Egg like he had under Arlen. It seems like that's what Dunk wants in order to make this work. And Makar says no, straight up, we're not doing that. And Makar, this is us getting to know that character more. He says he's my last son. He looks at how Darren's kind of the fuck up of the family. He sees Arian, he's sending him to the free cities to kind of basically as punishment. Like look at your actions, what it led to, basically the death of my brother, Baelor, heir to the Iron Throne. So he looks at Egg and he's like, he could be the one, right, that succeeds me when I become king. And he also, it's kind of tragic when he sees how the dysfunctionality of his family. He sees Egg trying to like thinking about murdering Arion, and he knows that Egg already has these thoughts, you know? So I was just it's interesting to look at the dynamics. I think Makar's gonna be a huge part of the show going forward because I think another thread that could lead to season 2 or 3, like Egg ends up going with Dunk, but without his father's permission. There is a prince of the Targaryens that is away from the family of the Targaryens and with Dunk. Is this season 2 hinting at Maekar hunting down Dunk to get back Egg? Like that's a potential thread for this show. But what do you think? Do you think that they'll carry that almost post credit that they had with Maekar kind of pissed off looking for Egg?
I think this is this was the you could argue this was the riskiest thing they've done this season because what did we comment from before? And I kind of alluded to this in the beginning is that they were pretty truthful to the novella,
Mm-hmm.
right? Here is where they were not truthful to the novella. In the novella, apparently, Makar agrees with Dunk saying, "Yeah, you could take him, and in your own way." And this is where in the show, Makar's like, hell no. Like, he's my last son. My other two are F ups. I'm now heir to the Iron Throne. He's a potential heir to the Iron Throne. Like, there's no way I'm going to let him go with you, especially after I lost my brother. And again, this is a huge turning point for Makar, right? And in his story arc, right? Or character arc, I should say, right? And he can't lose his son. And his only like son that he could kind of save or do right by because he's failed in his other two sons, right? Being a father, right? So I think it's interesting. It's interesting from a thematical point and a character point for Makar in this show and what they've kind of shown him to be in this final episode and humanizing him. Where I think it makes sense why they don't stick to the novella and saying, "Oh, you can
Mm-hmm.
go with Dunk here." But I think it's also interesting because the second season, which is already underway, they're going off the second novella, which besides Egg does not include any Targaryens, right? And it makes sense because no one's hunting them down because Egg has permission from Maekar, the heir to the Iron Throne, and his father to go with Dunk. So this will all be not straight from the novella. Now, George R. R. Martin is helping out with this script, right? So he probably already has helped out in some, I don't know, relevant storyline, through lines here to kind of help here. But that's one where that makes me a little nervous because we have a bad history of not going straight from the prior text and changing things, and especially major storylines like this would be, where if this season 2 would be off of the second novella, The Sworn Sword, where it will be something completely different than season 1. If anything, lower stakes than season 1, which is kind of crazy to say, but a lot lower stakes. But we're going to add this huge wrinkle here. I think it's very interesting and risky.
Well, I do like that George R. R. Martin probably just gave the green light to this, though. And he says he's got more ideas for Dunk and Egg. That to me is promising, even if it strays away from the novella. And they probably want more of some more connectivity between season 1 and season 2, characters carrying over, right? True introductions of Maekar and how he could factor into a season 2 here. But to have that conversation where he's like, he's my last born, he's my last son, basically like I need to protect him because he's the one I have the most faith in, even if he's trying to kill his older brother. That shows you how effed up this family is, and it gives some good motivation going into season 2. You want to do some like superlatives of this, like MVP, most improved player. You want to do that for
Okay, so what do you think? Want to start with MVP?
MVP? I think has to go to Dunk. You know,
Obvious.
so guy we loved to travel with through these 6 episodes. A guy we grew to love very early on in this show has the iconic speech in episode 4. He's got the iconic moment taking down Arian in episode 5. We're completely bought in on Dunk. He's a guy who survives to the end of this season. As much as I love Egg, like the center of the show was Dunk, and Peter Claffey showed that he could easily shoulder this thing. Not easily, but he can shoulder this thing. So I have to go MVP Dunk.
Yeah, it's similar to Jon Snow, where like you're you love and are more interested in like characters like Aryan, Damon House of the Dragon, Jamie Lannister, even before, or Tyrion to an extent there, who are not necessarily good people, but they have like, but they're like bad people, but you like they're like attractive from a audience perspective with their actions, right? But Dunk, similar to Jon Snow, those like simple, morally pure characters that can kind of convey that to the audience and are compelling. We're convinced. That's why, and the show needed us to be convinced of Dunk as a Game of Thrones central character over a course of a season, and he did that to a T. So Dunk is the obvious MVP.
So obvious MVP. Unsung hero. I think we go with the guy that died in episode 5. I think you go Baylor. Baylor was a scene stealer in every moment of the show. He was the best king that never was king. Um, Tragic death. He has the moment, like probably the moment of the season, aside from maybe Dunk asking, are there no true knights, right? Are there no true knights? And then him taking down Arian, like those two moments, but Baylor sweeping in to take the side. I will take Sir Duncan's side. That is the moment. Unsung hero. I think it has to go Baylor.
And so another thing I just want to point out in this episode of his son, Valer, or whatever, him saying like, "Oh, like how often does it happen when a father dies in his son's armor?"
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, "Damn, that sucks." But I also was thinking like back to episode 4 when he rides out at the end, Baylor, and he is like tugging at the armor, and he looks uncomfortable in it. And I think that was actually pretty good writing and acting, where it's like, hey, like it's a
Smart
little
decision.
snug, it's a little tight, and that makes sense if it's his son's. And I was like, damn, that actually is pretty good. So again, if you don't like look back at that and you say like, damn, this show again, those little details, right? Still that Game of Thrones element where that we love was fully shown through in the show, a spin-off show with new people behind it, new showrunners and directors and whatnot. Like very, very well done.
The other candidates here, aside from Baylor, probably can go Lionel Baratheon. I think he could be here. A guy, if this show ended after episode 3, you'd be like Lionel Baratheon. And he was great in this finale too. Hilarious, also sets us.
He's the fan favorite.
Yeah, if we want to do that, fan favorite Lionel Baratheon. When the Maester is taking care of Dunk and he says that Dunk is dying from his wounds, he goes like, "He's a shit Maester anyway. Get the fuck out of here."
That comment, I think, is not being is being slept on right now.
Ooh.
That's a huge comment to make that they don't like solve throughout the end of the episode.
No one else treats him.
And no one else treats him, and they're going into season 2. And they're saying like there's 3 stories with these guys on paper, 3 novellas. Is this one the Hedge Knight? Then you have the Sworn Sword, and then you have the Mystery Knight. And then George R. R. Martin has said he has 10 to 12 other stories with Dunk and Egg, like ready to go. And he's already given the outlines to the showrunner here. So Dunk ain't dying. But for them to leave that's like the one storyline I thought they didn't tie convincingly enough, in my opinion, because I don't think that's going to carry over in season 2. So I think that's the one thing that might like little detail that kind of went over their heads.
Like they got to show him resting somewhere. They got to show someone working with him, someone force him to drink something he doesn't want to drink or something like that. Like he should be struggling, right? He's walking through and like it's like he didn't just talk to someone who said he was dying, and then he's having all these conversations. It's like life going on as normal. I'm like, dude, this guy might drop dead right now. That's the way I was nervous as this episode was going. It's like, is he about to, is he going to be taken by somebody? Is he going to, be in a hospice, doing something, whatever. I thought that wasn't tied. I agree with you. That's a good point. But that decision to not go with Lionel, I thought was smart because like, that's once again, you're attracted to, right. These people that have wealth, the material life, you can hunt and drink and party all the time. That's not what Dunk is. So I like that he didn't go with Lionel, even though that offer was, presented to him. So we got so far MVP, Dunk, unsung hero, Baylor, fan favorite, Lionel Baratheon. I think most improved player, Raymond Fossaway. That's who I got. I had no idea that this guy was going to go from offering cider, to Dunk and talking shit about the Targaryens to being knighted and then fighting in the Trial of the 7, surviving, and then waking up the next day with a wife and a kid on the way and basically taking up his family cider business. Most improved player's got to be Raymond Fossaway.
Best come up. Yeah, like this guy just went from a squire who, let's be honest, not a great squire, to now he's a knight with a wife and probably going to be a very successful cider business and a great horse and money. Like that's because he bought the horse back. That's ridiculous. Like that is an
He might
incredible.
be the biggest winner of this season.
Yeah, because if you really look at it, like Makar now heir to the Iron Throne, but he lost a brother, and he always have like a something like behind his back, like you were saying before. It's like, oh, would have Baylor done this? Did you actually kill your brother like on purpose? Those questions are still there. Dunk, similar situation, that guilt, responsibility. Half the people are like probably hate him because like, oh, we lost an actual good king, and especially when we hate the Targaryens, he was the one that we actually kind of liked, and now they don't have him anymore. Right? There's like even with your supposed winners and like Egg, for example, too. Like you could even say like, is he going to be a good guy? Like when he had his hair growing back, the blondness coming back. I don't know, man. He seemed pretty accepting
And
of
then he
that a
picks
little
up the
bit.
knife.
Exactly. He's like he's still got that Targaryen in him. So I'm just saying, like Raymond is probably the only one that actually saw the benefits of the trial of the seven.
Yeah, I was trying to think of something for Egg. I'm like most likely to turn from lovable to hateable character at some point. Egg,
Yeah. But then with Egg, it's
or
like
evil character.
like the Egg. That's why like also the Makar decision. If you stuck to the novella, right, and say, oh, Makar let Egg take Dunk, it would also work from that perspective too, because he could say, oh my God, I saw my son about to kill another son. I need to prevent him from becoming Aryan or my other son, Dragar or whatever. I should send him. I should send him away with Dunk, right? Like that. That would have made sense too. I think. So I guess it's push and pull your preference there, but I think it's more what you said, where maybe they want to have some carryover into season 2 from season 1 because this is so successful, and season 2, if it's based off that novella, besides Dunk and Egg, there's no other secondary characters from season 1 that are going to be showing up in season 2, and that includes any Targaryens except Egg. So I think it's what you said. Why they did that.
Yeah, most likely to murder their brother. We'll give that one to Egg. But Egg deserves something more. Best drip.
Do you think? Oh yeah, that's
dude.
good.
This whole show. Oh, but I don't even know if Egg would get best drip.
No, like, I mean this episode.
No, but think about but like for the show, for the season.
Well, Lionel in the suit in the armor.
Lionel, Aryan as the dragon, in battle.
Yeah, you could just do like best armor for that.
Best armor goes to Lionel. But best drip's got to be Egg.
Do you think Egg continues to shave his head next season?
I think when he's with Donkey, I think he does.
Yeah, he just continues to shave it so no one knows he's a Targaryen and he's a squire and he's going around Westeros, especially when he's now being hunted down probably by he wants to be hidden so people don't say, oh, like because Makar's probably looking for him.
Yeah, that's what's going to lead to my final one. Like player to look out for is Makar, in my opinion. Player to look out for. See if season 2 he's hunting, Dunk down, and as he's like him. Dunk was accused of kidnapping Egg the first time, and like low key, he kind of is kidnapping him now, but Egg doesn't know that. Once again, it's like he's going to be charged with kidnapping again for something that he doesn't know he's doing. He's committing, that'd be bullshit. But I think Makar is the player to look out for based on his performance in this last episode, right? His feelings on the fallout of the trial of the seven, him being heir to the Iron Throne. I think he's a player to look out for. So, and that's the only one I would say look out for aside from Dunk and Egg. Like carry over into season 2 because I think Raymond goes off into the sunset, like he's living a dream. One of the few like Game of Thrones characters that's like, wow, look what you got. Like out of all this, it's kind of like how Bran became king. It's like, what the frick? Like, how did you end up on top of all this? Out of all these characters. But yeah, Makar, player to look out for.